Good day and thank you for joining me for another 5 minute period of Bible time. Today we'll be looking at the book of Ezra. And as we've been going, starting from Genesis, we are all the way up to Ezra. And in the previous books, we spoke of the Israelites going into captivity by Babylon. And here we see the first return of those in captivity. This is chronicled in Ezra, and Ezra takes us from that return, the first return, to the completion of the building of the temple. So these people, on their return, started to rebuild the temple. An interesting thing to note, directly going into Ezra, the first two verses in Ezra are almost word for word the last two verses of Chronicles, Second Chronicles. So this is an interesting thing to note. And this is the decree by Cyrus, the king of Cyrus. These are the Persians who had, evidently the Babylonians at this point had gone out of power, and it was now the Persians who were in power. Persians and the Medes, Persians. So this is an interesting piece of history. You can actually, if you will look up the Cyrus cylinder, you can look into some of the history concerning this decree to return. So Cyrus was generally releasing the captives at the time, giving them giving them permission to go back home. So here we find Ezra, and there are actually three known returns from captivity, or I should say three major, if there were others which are not noted. So this will be the first chronicled one, and it's dated about 536 BC, and there are others following that, which means not everybody returns in this captivity. So maybe some chapters to note, just so that I do not get behind with time. Some chapters to note. An interesting chapter to note is chapter 4, and I probably should have picked this out. I can't remember if I did. In First Kings, should be about chapter 18. The people here in Ezra chapter 4 are the Samaritans, and in First Kings 18 we get the background of how he came to have those Samaritans. It also gives us the background for why the Jews and the Samaritans have such a problem with each other. And actually, it's quite interesting if you read John chapter 4, where Jesus meets the Samaritan woman at the well. It gives a good bit of history as well, which we can connect to this, and then have a better understanding of this animosity between them. It's also quite an interesting piece of information to look into, the animosity between the Jews and the Samaritans. So you can connect Ezra chapter 4 with your First Kings 18, the history of the Samaritans. These are the people who are opposing them here in chapter 4, where we find opposition. From there, it tells us of the rebuilding of the temple. Let me see. I do not want to. Okay, we can also look at chapter 9, where we find that the Israelites had married people of other nations, and yet God had explicitly told them not to do this thing. And maybe if you have gone through the book of Numbers, you might remember Balaam. He's mentioned in the book of, I believe it's Hebrews, where he caused for Israel to sin by having them marry the Moabites. And these people caused them to go into idolatry. Another person to consider with this is Solomon, who married foreign women, and they led him into idolatry. So maybe just the thing to note about that is, when we are looking for life partners, I know sometimes a lot of people will follow our feelings, but we really should be having the end game in mind. Are we trying to get into heaven? We should look for a partner who has that same interest to get into heaven, because at the end of the day, it's much easier to pull you down than it is to pull you up. People have things they're used to doing, things they've grown up with. So it's always the best idea for us to be trying to make sure we are entering into heaven than to live on this earth for a short period of time saying, I don't even know how the marriage will turn out, if you'll even enjoy it, because you're definitely going to clash on some things. Excuse me, because you'll be trying to live a Christian life, and this person, if they're not about that, they'll be just trying to live their lives. So that's something we need to be careful about. And maybe one other thing you can consider, restoration. We should always be looking for that path that God gives, and we can only find that through the Bible. If you will note in Ezra, they do read, oh, that is in Nehemiah, excuse me. But yeah, all of this follows. They restore temple worship and put things the way that they should be, according to what God would want from them. And I believe my time is up. We could go into some other things, but I hope this helps you. And just a quick summary of the book of Ezra. It gives us the first return of the captives, and the rebuilding of the temple. Maybe just one more thing which I may have skipped over. In chapter 5, you will notice the prophets Haggai and Zechariah. There are books with these prophets' names, but I just wanted us to note them there in that they were living during this period. So again, that chronology of the Bible, it does not necessarily mean each book is in sequence. Yeah. So let me just stop there because I'm getting pretty long-winded, and I hope that helps you. Book of Ezra, the first return from captivity, rebuilding of the temple. Enjoy your Bible study. Thank you.